I'm Zara, and I'm 33 years old. This is the story of how my mother's cruel joke became the catalyst for the most painful and liberating revenge I never planned to take. Before we begin, drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. And if this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe. You never know when you'll need to hear that you're not alone. The screenshot came to me on a Tuesday morning. My friend Keisha sent it without commentary, just the image and 3 dots. I was sitting in my new studio apartment in Phoenix, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, drinking coffee from a chip mug I'd bought at Target the day before. The morning light came through the bare windows at a sharp angle, illuminating dust motes and the reality of my new, smaller life. I opened the image. My mother's post on X, dated the previous evening. Finally got my house back. Zara moved out today. Honestly, you should have left earlier, haha. But hey, better late than never. Hashtag empty nester, hashtag freedom at last. Mom life. There were 12 laughing emojis, 43 likes, 17 comments, all from her book club friends and neighbors, congratulating her on reclaiming her space. I read it 3 times before my hands started shaking. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers. It didn't break, just rolled across the hardwood floor, leaving a trail of lukewarm coffee in its wake. I watched it roll and thought, absurdly, that I should clean that up. But I couldn't move. I just sat there on my secondhand couch, staring at my phone screen, reading those words over and over until they stopped making sense and started just being sounds in my head. You should have left earlier. Haha. Let me take you back so you understand why those words felt like a knife, twisting in an old wound. My name is Zara Patel, and I moved back into my childhood home in Tempe when I was 28. Not because I was lazy or entitled or afraid of the world. I moved back because my father, Arjun, had just been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. And my mother, Priya, called me sobbing, saying she couldn't do it alone. I remember that phone call like it was yesterday. I was in a meeting at my tech startup in Seattle when my phone buzzed. I ignored it the first time, the second time. By the third, my boss gave me a look, and I excused myself. Zara? My mother's voice was so small, so broken. It's your father. I had a life in Seattle, a good job as a marketing coordinator for a tech startup that was about to go public. A boyfriend named Marcus who talked about proposing, who'd started looking at rings online and leaving the browser tabs open like hints. A 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the Sound, where I'd watch the ferries cross the water and feel like I'd finally figured out who I was supposed to be. Friends who knew my coffee order and showed up when I needed them, real friends. The kind you build in your 20s when you're all figuring out life together. I gave it all up in 2 weeks. Just until we figure things out, my mother had said on the phone, her voice small and fractured. Just until your dad stabilizes. 6 months, maybe. A year at most. I just need help getting systems in place. 5 years. I stayed for 5 years. In those years, I watched my father forget my name, then my face, then how to tie his shoes. I learned to administer medications, a complex cocktail that changed every few months as his needs shifted. I learned to redirect conversations when he got confused, asking about his job at the engineering firm he'd retired from 15 years ago, or calling me by his sister's name. I learned to clean up accidents with dignity and love, to pretend I didn't see the shame in his eyes on the days when he still had enough clarity to be embarrassed. I quit my job because his needs were unpredictable. He'd wonder if you didn't watch him. He'd panic in the middle of the night. He needed someone there, always, and my mother's job at the dentist's office had health insurance we couldn't afford to lose. You're young, she said when I gave my notice in Seattle. You can rebuild a career. I can't start over at 57. I broke up with Marcus when he said, I can't wait forever, Zara. You're choosing them over us. Maybe I was. But how do you explain to someone that walking away from your father while he's disappearing feels like murder? How do you explain that staying isn't a choice, it's the only thing you can live with? Marcus sent me a wedding announcement 2 years later. He'd married a woman named Jennifer. They looked happy in the photo. I cried for a week, then packed the announcement away and didn't look at it again. My mother worked part-time at the dentist's office, Dr. Mehta's practice, where she'd been a receptionist for 12 years. She'd come home at 3:30, tired, grateful for dinner on the table, grateful that Dad had been bathed and fed and kept safe. But somewhere in those 5 years, her gratitude curdled into expectation. I became less like a daughter and more like hired help she didn't have to pay. Did you pick up Dad's prescription? The bathroom needs cleaning. I invited the Sharmas over for dinner Saturday. You'll cook, right? Maybe that chicken tikka masala your dad used to love? Never a thank you. Never a what about your life, Zara? Never a how are you holding up? I started freelancing when I could, copywriting gigs I'd take on during Dad's naps or after he went to bed. The money was inconsistent, but it was something. It made me feel less like I was disappearing entirely. When my father died last January, I thought I'd feel relief. People tell you that's normal, that it's okay to feel relieved when someone stops suffering. Instead, I felt hollow. I'd given 5 years, and I couldn't remember who I'd been before. The girl who'd lived in Seattle, who'd had ambitions and plans and a boyfriend who wanted to marry her, she felt like a character from a book I'd read once. Someone I'd admired but never actually been. My mother grieved loudly, publicly. Facebook posts about her angel husband, about widowhood, about her strength. Long captions with black and white wedding photos, talking about their 42 years together. Talking about how empty the house felt, how quiet at home though. She barely cried. Instead, she started redecorating. She turned Dad's room into a craft space within 3 weeks. Bought a fancy sewing machine, installed floating shelves, painted the walls lavender. Life goes on, she said when I stared at her painting the walls, still able to smell my father's cologne in the air. You wouldn't understand. You've never lost a husband. I'd lost 5 years. I'd lost Marcus, my job, my friends, my 20s. I'd lost the chance to have children at the age when it felt easy and uncomplicated. But she was right, I hadn't lost a husband. So what did I know about grief? I decided to move out in October. I'd saved almost nothing, caregiving doesn't pay. And freelance copywriting barely covered my student loan payments and the phone bill I'd kept from my Seattle life. The only thread connecting me to who I'd been. But I found work as a freelance copywriter with a steadier client base, and I scraped together enough for a security deposit on a tiny studio in Phoenix. It wasn't much, 400 square feet. A kitchenette, a bathroom so small you had to step over the toilet to reach the shower. But it was mine. When I told my mother, she was folding laundry in the living room, watching one of her cooking shows. She didn't look up. Okay? She said, I'll help you pack. That was it. No questions about where I was going, if I'd be okay, if I had enough money. No acknowledgement of what I'd sacrificed. No mention of the 5 years. Just, okay. I waited for more, for something. But she just kept folding towels, matching corners with mechanical precision. Moving day was quiet. My Uncle Raj helped me load boxes into a U-Haul. He didn't ask questions, but I saw something in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or recognition. He'd visited once a month during those 5 years, always on Sundays, always for exactly 2 hours. My mother stayed inside, reorganizing the kitchen cabinets. I could hear her through the open window, humming along to the radio. As I carried the last box out, my books, the ones I'd collected in Seattle and hadn't had time to read, she called from somewhere in the house. Lock the door on your way out. Not goodbye. Not call me when you get there. Just lock the door. I didn't cry until I was on the highway. Somewhere between Tempe and Phoenix, the city skyline growing larger in my windshield. Then it hit me all at once, the weight of 5 years, the absence of gratitude. The casual cruelty of lock the door on your way out. I had to pull over at a rest stop and sob into my steering wheel while families walked past with their children, their whole lives ahead of them. And then, less than 12 hours later, that post. You should have left earlier. I sat in my empty apartment, staring at those words until they blurred. Around me, Phoenix buzzed with life I wasn't part of yet. I could hear my neighbors through the thin walls, someone's TV, a couple arguing, a dog barking. Somewhere, my mother was probably having coffee, laughing with her book club friends about her newfound freedom, about finally having her house to herself. Something inside me, something that had been bending for 5 years, finally snapped. I didn't want revenge. Not at first. I wanted someone, anyone, to see what had happened, to witness it. to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like I'd been erased. I spent that entire Tuesday writing. I wrote everything. The day I got the call about Dad's diagnosis, sitting in that conference room in Seattle while my colleagues presented pie charts and growth projections. The way Marcus looked at me when I told him I was leaving Seattle, not angry, just resigned, like he'd known all along I'd choose them. The first time Dad forgot who I was, calling me nurse and asking when his daughter was coming to visit. The meals I cooked, the medications I tracked on a color-coded spreadsheet. The nights I slept in a chair by his bed when the confusion got bad, when he'd wake up panicked and I'd hold his hand until he settled. I wrote about the job opportunities I turned down. There'd been 3, one in Portland, one back in Seattle, one in Austin. All of them with better pay, better titles, better lives. I wrote about the friends who stopped calling because I could never make plans, could never commit to anything. I wrote about my 32nd birthday, which I spent alone because Dad had a bad day and Mom had to work late. I wrote about my mother's craft room with its lavender walls, about how quickly she'd erased him. I wrote about her post. When I finished, it was a M. The document was 4,000 words. My eyes burned. My hands ached. But I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years clear. I didn't post it to X. That felt too small, too easy to ignore, too easy for her to dismiss or delete. Instead, I started a blog. It took me 30 minutes to set it up, just a simple WordPress site with a clean template. I called it The Cost of Caregiving. A Daughter's Story. I published my essay there, every raw word of it. And then this is the part that still makes my heart race. I shared it on every social media platform I had. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X. I tagged it with caregiving hashtags, family dynamics hashtags, elder care hashtags, sandwich generation hashtags. I didn't tag my mother. I didn't need to. I wrote, "This is for everyone who has sacrificed in silence. You're not invisible. I see you." Then I closed my laptop and slept for 14 hours. When I woke up Wednesday afternoon, my phone was on fire. The blog post had gone viral. Not celebrity viral, but real person viral. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of comments from people who'd lived similar stories. Daughters who'd given up careers. Sons who'd emptied their savings. People who'd been thanked with silence or worse, with resentment. Someone had screenshotted my mother's X post and put it next to an excerpt from my blog. It was spreading everywhere: Reddit, Facebook groups, Twitter threads. People were tagging it with hashtag toxic parents and hashtag ungrateful parents and hashtag caregiver burnout. My mother called at p.m. I let it go to voicemail. "Zara, what have you done? People are sending me messages. People are calling me cruel. This is, you have to take it down." She called 6 more times. Left 3 voicemails, each progressively more frantic. "You're making me look like a monster. This is so unfair. I sacrificed too, you know. I lost my husband. Call me back right now. This is humiliating. Mrs. Sharma asked me about it at the grocery store. I listened to each one twice. Then I deleted them. My uncle Raj called that evening. Your mother's beside herself, he said carefully. People from her book club are asking questions. The Sharmas unfriended her on Facebook. Dr. Mehta saw the post one of his other employees showed him. It's everywhere, Zara. I didn't lie about anything, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I know, he said quietly. There was a long pause. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. What you did for your dad. For her. I should have helped more. I should have, I don't know. Said something. Done something. I hadn't expected that. My throat tightened. It's not your fault. I managed. Maybe not, he said. But I saw you disappearing. And I didn't do anything about it. That's on me. Thursday morning, my mother showed up at my apartment. I don't know how she got my address, probably from Raj, though he swore later he didn't give it to her. Maybe she'd followed me on moving day. Maybe she'd gone through my mail. She pounded on the door until I opened it. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was uncombed, streaked with more gray than I'd noticed before. Her eyes were red-rimmed and wild. She was still in her pajamas, an old cotton set my father had bought her years ago. You need to take it down, she said. No greeting, no preamble. Now. No, Zara, please. Her voice cracked. People think I'm a horrible person. I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me to make chai and braid my hair, who'd sat with me through every childhood fever. At the woman who'd erased me so completely I'd almost believed I deserved it. Did you thank me? I asked quietly. Even once in 5 years, did you say thank you for giving up your life for us? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I watched her struggle, watched her search for words that wouldn't come. It was expected, she finally said, her voice small. You're my daughter. That's what family does. And what do mothers do? I asked. Do they celebrate their daughter leaving? Do they post jokes about it online? Do they tell her she should have left earlier? She looked away, at the boxes still stacked against my wall, at the bare windows, at anything but me. I didn't mean it like that, she whispered. How did you mean it? Silence, long and heavy and full of 5 years of things we'd never said. I think you should go, I said. She stood there for another moment, and I saw something flash across her face, anger, maybe, or shame, or some complicated mix of both. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her through the window, getting into her car, sitting there for a full minute before starting the engine. The blog post stayed up. Over the next few weeks, I received hundreds of messages. People shared their own stories of caring for aging parents, of sacrificing careers and relationships, of being taken for granted. A journalist from a caregiving magazine asked to interview me. A podcast about family dynamics wanted me as a guest. Someone from a publishing house sent me an email asking if I'd ever considered writing a book. I said yes to all of it. My mother stopped calling after that first week. I heard through Raj that she'd deleted her ex account, that she'd stopped going to book club, that she'd called in sick to work for 3 days. She told people I'd betrayed her, that I'd aired private family business for attention, that I was vindictive and cruel. Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd just refused to keep her secrets anymore. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Actual mail, a cream-colored envelope with my mother's handwriting, shaky and small. Dear Zara, I've been seeing a therapist, Dr. Chen, the one Dr. Mehta recommended. She says I need to take accountability. I don't know if I'm ready to, but I'm trying to understand. I think I was angry at your father for leaving me, for getting sick and making everything hard. And I took it out on you because you were there, and because it was easier than admitting I was scared. You gave up everything. I see that now. I saw it then too, but I didn't know how to say thank you because saying it meant admitting how much I'd asked you to lose. It meant admitting that I was selfish, that I put my grief, my fear, my needs above yours. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I'd forgive me either, but I want you to know. You were a better daughter than I deserved, and a better person than I knew how to be. I hope Phoenix is treating you well. Mom, I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer next to the wedding announcement Marcus had sent me years ago. 2 pieces of paper that marked the life I'd given up and the mother I'd lost in the process. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, even your mother, especially your mother. But I kept the letter. Today, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Phoenix, working on a memoir about caregiving and family wounds. The blog opened doors I didn't know existed. I have a book deal with an advance that would have seemed impossible a year ago. A literary agent who calls me weekly with opportunities. A therapist who's helping me untangle 5 years of resentment and love. Who's teaching me that both can exist at the same time. That loving someone doesn't mean letting them erase you. My mother and I haven't spoken since that letter arrived. Maybe we will someday. Maybe we won't. But here's what I know. I'm not invisible anymore. And neither is my story. The girl who lived in Seattle is gone. But the woman sitting in this coffee shop, she's someone I'm starting to recognize. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who refused to be a punchline in her own life. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about cruelty. Sometimes it's just about telling the truth loudly enough that silence can't swallow it anymore. And if that truth makes people uncomfortable, if it costs you relationships, if it makes you the villain in someone else's story, well, Maybe that's the price of being visible. Maybe that's what it costs to exist on your own terms. I take a sip of my coffee, a good coffee this time, from a local roaster, in a mug that belongs to the shop, and open my laptop. There's work to do, stories to tell, a life to build from the wreckage, and for the first time in 5 years, it's mine. All mine. The woman next to me glances at my screen, then at me. Are you a writer? She asks. I pause. A year ago, I would have said no. I would have said I used to do marketing, that I'm just freelancing now, that it's temporary until I figure things out. But today, I smile. Yes, I say, I am. And I mean it.